Didn't bother read. They read his stuff, what he said about it, and they didn't read what I'd said about it, which wasn't. Because still, now, if I ever say anything mildly offensive, like it's not like I'm a comedian. If anyone listens to this podcast, be aware that I don't shy away from saying things that are contentious and offensive. I sometimes even make mistakes, and then if I do, I sometimes even say sorry. That's how even within character. But it's funny that that's now become the most contentious thing I've ever said. Be nice to disabled people because they should be treated with equality, and let's battle for that. But they didn't bother reading any of that. So now, if I made a joke about Jimmy Savile after he's died,
did you? I missed that.
And of course, people went, "Oh, I see. You say you shouldn't mock disabled people, but you're happy to mock a dead man.
Yeah.
He's defenceless, isn't he?" Well, yes, I am happy to do that, and it's a different thing. I didn't say you couldn't make jokes about anything. I just said that maybe you shouldn't just carry. And it was at least it was an attempt at a joke. It wasn't just me using a word for no reason. And I just think, and Ricky Gervais talking about other stuff, has said he wouldn't talk about black people and use those words for black people or Asian people. I'm sure he wouldn't use those words as a needless punchline. So, in fact, it was much worse than the fans thought, because I was actually just saying this isn't what Ricky Gervais is doing at the moment isn't at all funny. It has no wit, which I think a lot of his stuff about disability and these issues have an element of social conscience and wit to them. So it was odd that he was being so witless and pulling faces on Twitter. So I thought, and I didn't. People were saying I was doing it for publicity. I didn't do any interviews about it. In fact, I wrote a blog 10 days before this happened, and then someone else selected all the quotes from that blog. So it wasn't me sort of setting out to. And really, I don't want that.
So what are you publicising?
I don't want to. I've got loads to publicise.
DVD,
I don't want to. Don't you wait till late in the podcast? Why do you think I'm back here doing this?
You can do this without me, though. You realise that.
No,
you could publicise your stuff without me.
Wouldn't be as good.
Yeah. I'll publicise it.
But I don't want to be. I don't want those idiots. And people just came. What was the most interesting about it was, I basically had 2 days of just my Twitter stream being just zooming through with people calling me a mong, right? Yeah. So just, you're a mong, you're a fucking mong. A lot of them saying you're a spastic mong, which to me suggested they weren't in tune with the overlord who suggested mong was no longer a word about being disabled. Yeah. Or maybe they were differentiating, saying you're a spastic mong, you actually are a disabled mong. Mong equals idiot, which was the argument. But I talked to Francesca Martinez, who has cerebral palsy, who weighed in a little bit into the argument because she'd been...
she was in extras.
Yeah, she was in extras. Yeah. And so people started having to go and say, how can you ever go at Ricky without him? You wouldn't have been even famous. Which I'm not sure he cast her in Grange Hill, but maybe he did. Maybe his tendrils go back into the past. But nobody... I said to Francesca, nearly everyone who's tweeted me has called me a mong in capital letters. You're a fucking mong, mong, mong. Has anyone done that to you, Francesca? Nobody had called Francesca a mong, which seemed odd to me. If mong doesn't mean disability, and all those people know that, why didn't they call a disabled person a mong? Almost like they do know what it means. So it was a stupid couple of days, but it's kind of interesting.
Historic in its own way, and exposed. It doesn't expose him as much as expose the kind of strata of fans that you get when you get that successful, because they are like fundamentalists. Like Morrissey fans who refuse to admit that Morrissey's ever done anything wrong and can't even just put him in context or even admit that some things are slip-ups. They just can't see anything other than this shining kind of messiah figure. It's ironic.
But it was interesting that he... all of his Twitter... He'd only really come back to Twitter, so I don't think he really understood it. So I don't think when he was retweeting me, that was a nasty thing to do. Apparently he then deleted the retweets, but so it looked like he hadn't done them. But... I think he didn't necessarily understand how it works. I had something else to say now. It's gone.
Sorry, I've got that here. Keep drinking the tea.
I'm drinking some licorice tea. That should sort it out.
Anyway, it was interesting to see it from the outside, but you've got enough to be getting on with without doing that.
I don't. Well, the reason I was talking about it is because I was doing Richard Herring's Objective at the time, all last month, which starts on Tuesday. I'm publicising because I make more money if more people tune in.
Yeah, that's true, because it's like a kind. That's how they pay you on the radio.
On the BBC, that's how you pay.
A penny for every person who listens.
That is not true. But so I've just written. I was writing about this disability. And this had come up, and so it's all right. And so I was writing about just the way, because I think it's interesting that you can be casually disabled, and I don't think any of these people, if it was someone saying nigger. If it was a white person saying "hello, my niggers," you might get away with that now in this current climate. But it would be a weird thing to do if he was then blacking up and putting pictures of himself blacked up.
Yeah.
I wonder what I was going to say a minute ago. I don't know. Never mind.
I'm
getting very old.
You've got too much to say. I'm
getting very old.
I'm much older than when you last saw me.
But he didn't really understand Twitter. So I don't know if he kind of got what was going on really with how kind of far it was reaching or who was reading it. But he's got like 500,000 followers. So it made me realise I didn't want any of those people. I'm quite happy.
Justin Bieber's got 14 million followers.
Yeah,
I mean,
but it makes it sort of Twitter. When I remember when Twitter started, it was like. I remember remarking that it was nice that it was on the internet and yet you didn't really get a load of shit from people.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
It was quite nice and people would ask you questions and people might be critical but in a nice way and a kind of intelligent way. And it seems to have slightly gone over that hump now that enough people are doing it that it's like the rest of the internet. So if something, people use it as a way of
showing off.
Well, running with flaming torches towards the citadel to have a go at people.
Also, do you want an army of people who will just leap to your defence no matter what you've done?
But then I've got a smaller army of people. It was kind of interesting. People going, "How can you Ricky has 400,000 followers. You have 70,000. So how dare you criticise him?" From someone with 2 followers. You're going to go, "Well, if we're going by that rule, I would think it'd be nice." People going, "I don't know who you are." And so I'm going, "Well, I don't know who you are, so do I have to listen to you?" And so it's kind of, it was. It would have been nice, I think, if at some point Ricky Gervais had acknowledged his debt to Lee and Herring on the hour. And so it would have been nice if he'd apologised or whatever. So I feel slightly disappointed in him as a human being.
Yeah, the worst thing about it is that it did, and this is your victory, it did, for some people anyway, just put a slight sort of taint on him. Just so that he's not perfect. Not everything he does is perfect. It's okay to think that. And if somebody does something wrong, then you should call them up on it.
Oh, I know what it was that I was going to say. It's just like in his stream, he's sort of going, anyone who criticised him, they were jealous. Any newspaper that wrote a bad review of him, they were jealous. He doesn't even seem able to countenance, which is odd for a comedian, because most comedians just think all the time that maybe I'm shit. Don't tap the floor.
That's what...
ask him.
Michael McIntyre spends half his time thinking he's shit.
And so he's like massively overconfident. It's like that he couldn't even make a mistake. So that was he couldn't be wrong about this. So he had to go on and on and on. It was like a child. He'd been chastised for it, and he decided what he would do was carry on doing it much more for a bit. And then which I think if he just the minute someone said maybe don't do that, he just stopped. I mean, he sort of started saying twong instead of mong, which meant Twitter mong. But at least it's a new made-up word. It's still kind of weird. But you don't have the right to change the meaning of a word. That word has not changed its meaning, and some people might not know the meaning. And in one of the objectives, I talk about how when I was 18, I was using the phrase "wogged" to mean stolen.
Oh, really?
And I was at university, and Stuart Lee said to me, that might be seen as being offensive because it comes from wog, so it's implying black people are thieves. And I said, "Don't be stupid. I'm not racist. I wasn't doing it for that. It's a completely different word." And then I thought about it for a bit, and I thought, "Oh yeah, well I'll just stop using the word. If there's any, it doesn't matter if you don't know, if you're not realising why you're doing it. That's not the point." So it was kind of weird that he kind of tried to push it and carry on. But Tim Minchin had a very similar thing a few days later where he'd used the word tranny on 8 out of 10 cats, which I didn't realise was massively offensive to anyone, but for transsexual, tranny. Or transvestite, tranny.
Was he saying that trannies were bad?
Well, no, he just used the word, and then some people said to him, we don't like you using that word. And he was similarly kind of going, well, I don't want anyone telling me what to do, but I've been advised by people in that, in that community that it's not a word to use, so I'll stop using it. But I'm not going to apologise for using it, but I'm not going to carry on using it. Which was, he just had a very dignified response. It was better than that, in fact, the way he dealt with it. But that's. I think when it comes down to it, it's not. People think that I guess that's what I'm getting. When I make a rude joke, or whatever, people think, "Oh, you're the guy who found something offensive," and I find that offensive, and it wasn't. I even found the Mong thing offensive. I just thought it was pathetic. That's why I just thought it was pathetic that a 50-year-old millionaire was doing that and then claiming he was reclaiming it for disabled people, when clearly most disabled people, a majority of disabled people that really don't like it, still get that word directed at them. Plenty of people told me about that, and I think that's the rule, isn't it? If the community involved don't like it, then you move on.
Well, it's like when in the Young Ones, Rick's fictional character, Rick Mail's fictional character, used the word spasmo, which kind of was a made-up version of that insult from the 70s, and I'm sure a couple of people might have copied that at the time, thinking it was okay to use a word like that now. But it was basically a kind of satire and the sort of thing that he would, even though he was right on.
It's not that the word can't be used. No. So then when, like that night in the Holy Flying Circus, the producer character says, pull a face like a Mong.
Yeah.
Which proves again that Mong is a word meaning to someone with disabilities or Down syndrome. It's a nasty word.
1979.
But also he's a horrible, objectionable, nasty character. So it's happened. And I think also in Shameless there was some storyline about it. So, but it's not that disability is a subject you can't do comedy about. It's a subject we must do comedy about, and to make people aware of these issues. It's just the same as it's Roy Chubby Brown. When I linked to a thing of Roy Chubby Brown again from this subjective thing, I'd come across it. I wasn't able to use it on the radio, but him doing a song about Gollywog, how Gollywog was just a toy, and how they used to call it Nignog and Wog and Coon and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And on the audience all laughing just at these racial words because you're not allowed to say them, and that's the humour in it, and that's all it is. And it's just objectionable, horrible, and disgusting, and proves the opposite of what he's saying, that the Gollywog isn't just a toy because it comes loaded with all these kind of
there's an
prejudices.
The linguistic argument is that if the phrase "monged out" has replaced it, but it hasn't, because monged out means that you almost made yourself disabled by taking too many drugs.
That's where you think where it comes from. So it's never changed.
It's quite clear that it's still the same thing.
And I said, if you mean idiot, why don't you use the word idiot? And pick which. The reason people were so stupid they can't understand anything you say. Because I'd said there was a couple of things I said. I said if mong means idiot, why not just say idiot? And then people going, well, because I like to have different words to use for things, but the reason that you use mong is because it means something different than idiot. That was my point. It means someone who's an idiot because they are disabled or resemble someone who's disabled. Yeah. And it kind of perpetuates a myth that disabled people are stupid, in the way that 1970s jokes perpetuated myths. Black people were stupid, would rape you, and you didn't want them moving next door to you. Yeah, and all these things are now stereotypes about disabled people that are kind of doubly unfair, because disabled people, in a large part, cannot defend themselves, or many of them can't, and so it's kind of and are already massively ostracised in society. So I think it's like a really important issue, and it's obviously something people going, oh, you're jumping on a bandwagon with this, which the bandwagon I've jumped on 8 years ago in order to get to this point.
But the people who are saying that obviously don't know anything about you.
No.
So in a way, you didn't need to dignify them with a response, but you took a lot of time out to dignify them with a response, even though they didn't really deserve any of that kind of dignity.
But then you say, I said it's interesting that Carol Thatcher got sacked for saying Gollywog. Will the BBC sack Ricky Gervais for saying Mong? Will they stop his? And I wasn't saying sack Ricky Gervais. I was just making the point that they weren't going to do it. Because people, it shows the way that disability isn't treated in the same way as race issues, and it should be. But also, Ricky Gervais is making millions of pounds for the BBC. So that was my point. But then you'll get occasionally someone will tweet me and go, "You're the guy who wanted Ricky Gervais taken off TV," and I didn't say that. So it's kind of insane the way it goes, and people don't listen to anything you say. So it's probably pointless engaging with them, but it seemed worth it.
Well, that's the trouble with Twitter, isn't it? You